All I can say is it's about time. I finally got to see brand new 2025 Brinkley fifth wheels and Brinkley travel trailers and can formulate an opinion and express it to you. Oh, spoiler alert, they're not the best I've ever seen, and they're not the worst I've ever seen. Welcome to hbrv Lifestyle, the podcast. I am the host, the Honey Badger, here to give it to you straight and transparent about the RV business, as well as other things. And I'm sorry it's been a little bit since I've talked. I've been super busy. My car took a crap on me. I'm in the middle of fighting Jiffy Lube about it because it was their fault. Stupid me. I've been going to the same Jiffy Lube for 9 years and somebody finally screwed up. So now I'm in this rental car. It's an electric vehicle. It's a Kia Niro. It's pretty cool. But I've been dealing with a whole bunch of stuff, and so I apologize. First off, the first thing I want to say about Brinkley is some of the recalls that they have had this year in 2024 have just been absolutely stupid. This latest one about the chains, the breakaway chains being underrated for their travel trailers is just stupid and ridiculous. I mean, how is it? And again, I'm not mad about it. It's just like you put yourself on this pedestal of being the best in the business, just like you did with Grand Design. And because remember, the owners of Grand Design, the original owners, are the same guys that started Brinkley. So you put yourself on this pedestal, yet you're still being cheap when it comes to the simplest things. Like, why not do it right the first time? That's just my question. Why couldn't you do it right the first time? Just put the proper chains or do overkill on the breakaway chains. Show everybody that the stupid little recalls that other manufacturers have that are just common sense recalls, like why didn't you just do it right the first time, right? And it goes with any manufacturer. It's not just Brinkley. It's every manufacturer with this. But that's also why I'm like, they're not the best. Now, they do some really cool stuff. Let me give some positive feedback first. First off, they remind me uniqueness-wise of what Grand Design was when it first started. When Grand Design first started, it had a lot of uniqueness to it, unique floor plans, small little things that separated it. Remember, we talk about lighting, or at least I talk about lighting in the travel trailers and fifth wheels of Grand Design. That's what separates them from everybody else, is how much lighting is inside. Brinkley, to me, it's more about the storage. Like, in a lot of the Brinkley stuff that I've seen, I don't feel like there's a lot of waste of space. I don't feel like their fifth wheels or their travel trailers are lacking storage necessarily. I mean, they're lacking the same type of storage everybody else lacks because there's only so much you could squeeze into certain floor plans. But, you know, from my perspective, it feels like they didn't waste any spaces in most of their floor plans. Again, when I walk inside, they don't skimp on the lighting. Where a lot of the fifth wheel brands like Forest River and Coachman and Keystone and Jayco, like, cut back on the lighting to save money, Brinkley does the same thing they did with Grand Design. They put more lighting than anybody else. Now, when it comes to the materials and the components, it's the same stuff everybody else is using. Fact of life. They're not doing anything that is so unique to the market that nobody else has already done or is already doing or in process of doing. Okay, so it's not like you're buying a Brinkley and you're buying something superior to every other product out there. Number one, I would tell you Mobile Suites is a lot better product still than Brinkley. Lux is still a better product. Riverstone by Forest River is still a superior product. And even with frame failure and frame flex, even with all the problems Grand Design has had with frame failure and frame flex, when I walk into a Solitude, I feel like I'm getting more value out of a Solitude than I am a Brinkley. Which brings me to my second point. Technically my third point. They are supremely overpriced for what they are. these are not, they should not be this expensive. They're using a lot of the same materials, a lot of the same components, a lot of the same manufacturing techniques that Keystone does, that Forest River does, that Lance at Rev Group does. There's a lot of similarities with all their stuff. It feels like to me that you're paying for the brand name, that you're paying for the marketing. To me, it feels like you're pretty much covering the cost of the marketing for them to put themselves on the pedestal, because let's face it, there's not a lot of negativity about Brinkley online. They've done an excellent job deleting people's criticisms, if there are any criticisms out there. And I'm going to link a YouTube video that was done by a couple of inspectors, and the guy, part of the husband-wife team, the guy is excellent at kind of describing that they are overpriced and overhyped. Now, on the other side of things, they are not at all close to the worst. I mean, KZ and a lot of the other, let's call it, affordable brands are far below what Brinkley is, okay? Brinkley, to me, is more like a Rockwood fifth wheel by Forest River, Flagstaff fifth wheel, or Cougar fifth wheel by Keystone, injected with steroids as far as interior design, as far as features and components and name brand stuff. Like, they don't, when it comes to like a lot of the TVs and a lot of the entertainment value stuff, they use name brand stuff, a lot like Riverstone or Montana Big Sky or Jacob North Point does. But it just feels like it's like, okay, I go walk into a Rockwood or Flagstaff fifth wheel by Forest River, and I feel like I'm getting a very solid product. I'm getting a very like well put together product. But Brinkley, it's like they put all the glamour and glitz into it. And to me, I mean, I know this is going to sound bad. It's not meant to be negative. It's meant to just kind of be my personality. Brinkley, to me, is a big pig with a lot of lipstick. I mean, and I'm sorry, it's just, to me, it's nothing so extraordinary that it's going to outclass everything out there. Okay? But it's a solid trailer, a solid fifth wheel. I can't say that there's a lot of big negatives with it, but there are a lot of small things that you're like, really? You're doing that? You're charging people this amount of money and you're building it like that? You're cutting this corner, you're cutting that corner. And I'm starting to get complaints from dealers, Brinkley dealers, telling me that when they come in from the factory, they're coming in like everything else. Not finished, incomplete, crappy. I mean, they feel like they're, at this moment, they feel like they're basically finishing the unit at the dealership for the manufacturer. Okay? One dealership, won't mention who, it's not fair to them. I don't want to ruin their relationship with Brinkley. But there's one dealer in particular told me that a few of the 2025s and even the end of the 2024 started coming in like crap. Like they're coming in with like laundry lists of problems. Factory fresh. Now, I believe I have some explanation for that, okay? It's not an excuse, it's an explanation, okay? Some of the explanation would be, I'm not sure, because they keep everything really close to the vest. They do not, Brinkley, like old Grand Design, don't want any negative news out. They don't want anybody to talk badly about them, because that ruins the marketing strategy of being the best in the industry, right? The most innovative, the best, even though they're not. The explanation would be is if they're having internal problems with people leaving and going and seeking other jobs, poaching. That's something a lot of people in Indiana, a lot of manufacturers in Indiana experience is for 3 months I'll have one worker, and all of a sudden Jayco offers $2 more an hour. Then 3 months later, Forest River offers $2 more an hour. So there's like a rotating like spiral of turnover that occurs in Indiana. And it's gotten worse since COVID because people are chasing the money. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but in Indiana and places like Indiana and Michigan, $2 an hour raise or increase in pay is a lot of money. The cost of living in those states is not much. Okay, it's not like Los Angeles or Chicago or New York or Miami or anything like that. It's very country, low population areas, and the cost of living isn't that much. So, you know, when they're getting offered $2 more an hour, that's like a big raise. So there's not the loyalty. And I'm not blaming anybody. Believe me, I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody at all. This is fine. But a lot of people chase the money because they're trying to feed their family. And right now that's a struggle for a lot of the United States. Look at me. I was chasing a job. I have not had a job or steady income outside of doing Uber and doing YouTube and doing TikTok for the last 3 weeks. You know, I'm scraping by. No one's hiring. So for them, if they get offered a job with more money, they're going. So there could be that internal problem. The other internal problem may be is it may be a decision by Brinkley to cut down the amount of units built. Maybe they got smart and said, you know what? We might as well charge more money to the dealers and build less units. Well, when you do that initially, quality goes down. Okay? Most people don't understand. When quality is at its best at an RV manufacturer, you have people that have been working there at least a year, and they're building their target amount of units. Not more, not less. So let's say their target is, let's say on these big Brinkley fifth wheels, let's say the target is 5 a day. Well, if they're pushing 8 or 9, quality's going to go down. If they decide to cut it down to 2 or 3, quality's going to go down initially until they kind of adjust. Okay, so there is explanations. It may not be something that occurs for a long period of time. It could be they're going through a transition. But what that reminds me of and tells me is Brinkley is not the best. Far from it. Let's stop talking like Brinkley's on the top of the list and going to be the next industry darling. It's the same thing as everybody else. Nothing extraordinary, okay, when it comes to quality or anything of that nature. They're the same as everybody else. But, with the exception that they are not the worst. They're not even in the bottom tier of the worst. I could give you a bottom tier type of deal. How about like KZ Durango? Those are pretty bad, okay? God, I've heard a lot of complaints from dealers about east to west fifth wheels. I've heard a lot of complaints about, Montana high country. Not Montana itself, but just Montana high country. Things of that nature. So if I were to do a top and bottom list, top 5, bottom 5, Brinkley would be on neither list. They wouldn't be in my top 5. They wouldn't be in my bottom 5. They'd be somewhere in the middle. Okay. Fifth wheel, now travel trailer wise, I think the Brinkley travel trailers are exactly on par with Keystone Cougar, Forest River Flagstaff / Forest River Rockwood, because they're the same product. Lance travel trailers. Who else can I give you an example of? Coachman, Freedom Express. Things at that level. I think they're identical. I will say this, because I actually had the opportunity to go see a customer's 2025 Brinkley fifth wheel and a customer's 2025 Alliance Paradigm side by side in the same RV park. And I will tell you that I would take the Alliance Paradigm over the Brinkley any day of the week. There's just the little things that Alliance does better. Again, two different trains of thoughts though. See, the problem with me is my bias is I know too much about who the players are and what their mindset is. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. So the Brady boy, I call them the Brady boys. Okay, they were part of Heartland, and they built one hell of a fifth wheel for about a 5-year period. The Bighorn, the Landmark, the Big Country, the Cyclone, the Road Warrior. They were ugly as can be. Ugly as hell interiors. I mean, if you let the wife walk into a Bighorn or a Landmark back in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, without explaining the unit and explaining what the build construction and how it's built, you would never get her to go in another one. You had to explain it first. It's one of the rare things in life where you had to pitch the product before they walked in, because if you didn't, you were going to lose them. That's how well they built those older Bighorns. Now, Heartland nowadays is in my bottom 5, but we won't get into that. That's another day for another time. But when I go into a Paradigm and I go into a Brinkley, I feel like they're almost identical in a lot of ways. There are small little differences, but those small little differences to me do not justify the cost of a Brinkley fifth wheel. You could buy a Paradigm for a lot less money than you can a Brinkley. And to me, you're getting more out of that Paradigm than you are out of the Brinkley Z. Okay? It's also a character thing for me too. Okay? Character for me is you have Brinkley. Brinkley's owners have a unique history of selling off companies within 3.5 to 4 years of inception. Okay? They were part of Keystone RV. They weren't the owners, but they were a part of Keystone RV. They sold it off to Thor within 3.5, 4 years of inception. They sold a couple boat companies and other companies within 3.5, 4 years of inception. They sold Grand Design within 3.5 to 4 years of inception. Now you got Brinkley. Will they sell Brinkley? Now they've commented, they've thrown Josh the RV nerd at me, saying I'm crazy and I'm smoking crack and I'm smoking dope, that they're never gonna sell and I'm full of crap and yakety yakety yak. Hey, I know he was instructed to do that, so I ain't mad at him. Hey man, if you're watching, I know damn well you were forced to do that video, and I know you probably weren't happy about it, okay? But the reality is how long till that company sells off? We don't know. We know the economy's garbage. I know of any rumors have been squashed in the last 3 months, because I know for certain that nobody has the money to buy Brinkley, even if they wanted to, okay? Because that's how bad the economy is overall. And then you also have to look at the fact that, will Alliance RV sell? I think if somebody came up to those boys and told them, gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, like they did with, like Thor did with Heartland, it would be a done deal. But it would have to be a stupid number, okay? It would have to be a number that they couldn't say no to. And I don't see anybody doing that in the near future. I don't see anybody doing that in the far future for a while. Brinkley is the new shiny toy. Somebody that has a stock market dip, investors are shorting the stock because of quality problems with frames, or quality problems with roofs, or quality problems with ACs, or whatever the case may be. You bring on a new product that generates and stabilizes a stock price, right? Stabilizes investors from selling off, stabilizes big groups, big hedge funds from shorting your stock. And I don't think it would take a ridiculous number. I think it would have to be a number that would be valuable, because they've been known to do that, right? So you just have to, that's where like my pieces are all in a row of, okay, you're an independent today, but will you be an independent 6 months from now? Will you be an independent at the end of 2025? We don't know. What is the history? Okay, you go out to an Alliance RV rally, and the people that buy Alliance just have a different feel to them. Okay, now the guy from Crappy RV, I love that guy. He's freaking cool. I'm a fan. He's had some issues with his paradigm, but I know at the end of the day he's going to get it. They will solve it. They're going to take care of him, and they would take care of him whether he had a following or not. Just know the guys. I mean, knowing the guys, do they do everything right 100% of the time? Do they everything, do they do the right thing every single time 100% of the time? No. Does any company in the United States, Canada, or the world? No. Okay? So that's how I look at it. And my final thought is this. Don't buy a coach for the name, okay? Buy the coach because we've learned something. Grand Design sells to Winnebago. Quality at Winnebago takes a dive. Don't know why. Don't know what the problem is. I'm not a part of the manufacturing process. We'll never know how deep the frame failure and frame flex thing really is. We'll never know the true numbers. We'll never know the true reasons. We'll never know who's really to blame. Okay? But what I do want to say is this. Brinkley, I've heard of a couple people having a problem with the frame on Brinkley, but it ain't frame failure. Like I've seen a couple service departments that the I-beam has a small crack in it by where the axles are or the tires are, but nothing as dramatic as the frame flex or frame failure thing that Grand Design's going through. Okay, remember this. Brinkley's are pretty heavy fifth wheels. So if you're worried about frame failure or frame flex, so far, I have not gotten anything on a Brinkley at all. Outside of some service guys have told me an I-beam crack here, something there, small little things that the customer caught because they're doing their inspections, they're doing their due diligence on their coach because they spent a lot of money on it. And nothing that's so terrible it's going to compromise the safety or compromise the coach or compromise the integrity of the coach. So overall, if I was going to give it a grade, I would give Brinkley, based on where they put themselves on a pedestal, I'd give them a B-. Okay? Now, if they didn't put themselves on the pedestal, if they didn't try to make themselves out to be bigger and better than what they really are, I would give them a B+. But because of the marketing strategy, the same one they used with Grand Design, and actually going through and picking apart these coaches, I can tell you B-. And it was pretty close to a C+. And again, not because I think they're piles of crap, but because of where they put themselves. So if they brought themselves back down to earth, that they're not that great, and they lowered their pricing and became more affordable, I'd probably give them closer to B+ or A-. But based on price, what the product really is, and their silly marketing that they're trying to convince people of, we'll call it B- and call it a day. Till next time. toolkit and sense of humor, folks.